Hello, my name is Robert Love. I have been a long-time Delphi and C++ builder developer. In today's session, we are going to cover the concept of responsive design. If you've done any recent web development, you may be familiar with the concept of responsive design. Many of the key principles apply, although the technology used varies greatly. First off, we're going to discuss what is responsive design. Then we will start showing the various tools to help you in your design. Throughout, we will discuss how each of these applies to real-world scenarios. Finally, we'll end up with a slide that wraps up the various real-world scenarios we discussed during the tools section. Responsive design is all about changing your application's behavior, depending on the various resolutions your application may run on. Delphi supports many methods to help you with this. In this session, we are going to explore some of them. This session is focused on FireMonkey application, although some of what I discuss can be applied to your VCL applications. Some of you have been present for years, and some of these have been present for years, and others are a little hidden and may be new to even experienced developers. So hopefully we have something for everyone. If you see this slide here that you might have been staring at, we're actually looking at a web page. Responsive design started on the web where they really wanted to deal with the various form factors of, hey, we have a desktop application, but we want it to scale well as we scale all the way down from like a tablet down to a phone. And we want it to behave slightly different in each scenario. We don't need to have horizontal and vertical bars or text too small to see on the device. Those types of things just don't apply when you're dealing with mobile apps if you want them to be responsive. So what we're going to talk about is building a single application that can support the various form factors that you might be faced with. So we are going to immediately switch over to Delphi, and we're going to do a file new FireMonkey mobile application, and we're just going to select a blank application. And with this, I want to introduce you to some of the key things that you might see in the designer. First off, on the designer, it's your friend. Please use some of the tools that are here in a way that you've probably not realized that you had. First off, screen real estate can be a premium on all the devices that you're on. So I quite often like to press this button right next where my mouse cursor is here, and it gets rid of the borders. This allows us to see it without the pretty image that's a faked image around this, but it gives an idea of what phone or what device we're on. The next one is this rotate button. It actually just allows us to see what our design surface will look like in landscape versus portrait mode. We also have the fact that there are different sizes for everything. So we have an iPhone 5 that's slightly bigger, iPad that's even bigger. We even have down to a small Android phone that's really small. Or we can have like the Google Nexus 10. Each of these have different resolutions and different factors for our form, and we need to really explore how to use these in a way that is good for your application. One of the things that's driven me nuts over the years is people who design forms with Delphi, and when you go down into the bottom left-hand corner, you start resizing, things don't behave. Everything scrolls off the screen. Well, mobile, it's no different. I see this actually in non-Delphi applications, and I've seen it in the best of poor designed applications. So let's just start off by dropping a button here. And then we're going to drop an edit box. Okay. And we're just going to lay these out Now, this is where the design surface is your friend. That looks good. I've got a landscape form. This is the way I want my phone app to look. And as soon as oh crap. As soon as I change orientations, half my controls are gone. So the first thing that we want to talk about has been in Delphi for many, many years, and that is anchors. So all we need to do here is we get to choose which side it's going to anchor to. So we're going to anchor this edit box to the left and the right side, so it'll stay proportionate to the right. And we're going to anchor the button from instead of the left to the right. Now, as we change the resolution, things adjust. This concept hopefully is not new to you, but it is one that allows us to handle just the simple rotation of a device in a really easy way. Now we're going to talk about more complex things where you really want the whole design of the application to switch when you're landscaped. You can do that versus portraits. So let's talk about another thing that is there. From the Delphi 1 days, wow, talk about going back. There was this thing called, there was no such thing as anchors actually. And everybody used alignment. And we would use this little align property on every control, and we'd select AL client or AL right, and we'd get our controls lined up, and we'd nest them in a bunch of panels. Well, some of those concepts still survive today. And in fact, they've been greatly enhanced, and that's why I want to cover them. So before we would nest them in panels, but now a panel, if I drop a panel down, you can notice it's different color. It has some design characteristics with it. And in the VCL, you would drop down a panel and just turn off all the borders, and everything would usually work fine for you. In this case, we want something that's a little less. So if we want a T-layout control is just a non-visual control that's kind of a container for us. And with it, this is where we can use it to group controls together and use it for the various alignment type things that we need. But if I hit this drop-down list, it's no longer the same things as what it was before. So we have AL bottom, center, client, contents, fit left, fit right, etc. Most top, most bottom. Well, actually, no, most spot. Yeah, most bottom. Anyway, lots and lots of options here. The help file is incredibly useful on what do each of these mean. I don't think we should spend a lot of time in going through each one of those. But if I were to just select, hey, bottom, now you'll notice this line, everything sizes out to the bottom and it stays there. Notice the size, see how high it is. If I rotate this, it stays the same height, but stays at the bottom of the screen. This is kind of done here to also introduce you to another concept that's also been in the VCL, but not very many people tend to use it. It really helps itself on a mobile platform. And to start that off, we're just going to erase all the controls that we've done to date, and we're going to talk about layout. Layouts, there's a whole bunch of them here. The T layout, which we've talked about. A T scaled layout. Scaled layout is if I drop this on and anchor it to my entire form, and then I put everything down and align it to client. And then I go to, say, an iPad device, which is significantly bigger than this phone that I'm showing here. It will scale up everything on the thing. So the edit boxes will get slightly bigger, the buttons will get slightly bigger, labels, etc. It's not always the thing that you want, but it's nice to know that you have. So there are times that you do want something to just scale up because that's what it should do. Another option that we have is the T grid layout and the T flow layout. And we're going to show the T flow layout first. So we're going to drop a flow layout, and I am just going to align AL client here. If you'll notice, while I did that, it set everything out, but it also just uses the anchors. So anchors and alignment are tied together, and they behave the way they should. Another option that we have here is now I'm going to just drop down, let's say a label, and an edit, another label, and an edit, and say I really want long edit boxes. I want them longer than that, actually. So let's just, no, not that, this button. I want some really long edit boxes. So here, I might have, I keep hitting the wrong button if you'll notice. If you'll notice, the label, edit, now it's not necessarily pretty, you can spend some time, but you'll notice that instead of having label on the same line, they're now on the second line. Now I could adjust this out. So it's like this. But anyway, you have some flexibility, kind of power to play with flowing layout. And this allows for things to adjust differently depending on your landscape or portrait mode. Another one is a grid layout. So let's just talk about grid layout. A grid layout, we'll also align this to client, is different in that if you noticed, I was able to drag the T edits back and forth. A grid, everything is fixed within it, the size. So if I come in here and drop buttons, button, button, and I'm just going to keep dropping buttons. So I got a whole bunch of buttons. Notice how they're all the same size. If I click on the grid, I get to choose item height. So I could come in here and say 100 by 100. So now these are my buttons. And you notice I was able to get 4 across. Well, if I rotate that, now I can get 3. There are times when this is useful. And so I wanted to point out how a grid layout works. The nice thing about all of this is layouts are nestable. So you can nest within, say, a grid layout. You might have 2 items that you want to change, and inside of that you could have just a normal layout that's just a normal container of controls that's at the fixed size, but it's behaving and dynamically sizing, say, with the align properties or the anchors. I can have flow layouts nested inside of grids or vice versa. This kind of gives us some flexibility to adjust as we move along. But you know, that all said and done, ultimately, sometimes we really want our screen to just drastically change when we move, say, from a form. So say we have an iPad app versus an iPhone app. With that, we get the need to switch devices on a regular. Here, I'm just going to show you. Nothing better. So I have an application here. A real simple application. But it has a list of people down the left-hand side. It has an edit box and some fake text in here. I also have the need to have the same application as a phone. And if you'll notice here, I have the phone application and I only see the list. Because when I click on this list, I want it to move to the details. So best bet here is I want to show you how I design this and how this can be useful in the types of things that you might run into in your design. So first off, I've designed 2 frames. They're real simple. I didn't even change the names. Frame 3. This is my detail frame. It has an edit box and it has a memo. And these are wide binded off to a common data module. I also have another frame here that's just the list. All right. With that, I was able to say I have a form for a pad and a phone form for a phone. So the first one is the pad. If I go in and look at the pad, notice there's no code, but all I've done is drop 2 things down and I've aligned the panels or the frames that I already had. If I go to the phone, it's a little different. So we'll just take a second to look at the phone. And the phone, if we come in here, the main control is a tab control. And on the tab control, we have 2 tab items. There's tab item 1 and tab item 2. So tab item 1 I have, I kind of got them backwards, but that's the way I did it for this design, is the details. If you'll notice, there's a little back button over here. I also had to add a couple of actions. One to change forward and change back. That is a standard action, so you can just tie it in. And then with that, I wanted to, let's just click on tab control and switch tab item 2. I wanted the click here to move. So I said on the selection changed, I want to move forward. So with that in mind, we're able to come over to our targets over here. And I go to my iOS simulator. And I have an iPad. And if I run this application, all right. So you'll see I have this application just behaving with both panels side by side. Well, with responsive design, I want to point out that you should really start with the smallest form factor you want to address first. And then this allows you to build up from there. And in this case, I had 2 things that I could fit in a form factor. This list and the details. I was able to do both and get them to behave in a very simple way. So let's just go over to the phone here and run this again. Okay, now I have my list. As I select, I can navigate forward and back. Nice little transitions. Things that are not hard to do, but I can then add the functionality that I need from the small form factors in. And show that there's a difference. So really I've put all the logic in one set of frames, and now I just tie them together in a nice, simple, elegant way to have 2 different forms. But how did this change? How did I switch from iPad to iForm? I noticed I had 2 forms here. How'd that work? So let's go back to that. First off, on each form, if we select on the designer surface, if we select the form, there is a property. This property is called form family. And this form family is right here. Okay. And now if I go to the iPad, I'll see the same thing. 1. Form family. And both of these say main form. So if we go look at the project source, just view project source, it adds a new thing in here called register form family. And one thing that should be noted is the create form here does not really create your forms. It actually is just creating a registry, not really a registry entry, but just keeps a list of what needs to be created. And then in the actual run, it actually does the registration or does the creation. This allows it to know which of the two to create at what time. This is fully documented in the help file, but one of the things I ran into is it's broken. So I have a little unit called Fix Me. I'll post this online. Nothing spectacular. Right now it only supports the iPad and the iPhone, but I'll figure out a way to get it to work for Android devices. But the form factor for the application is not setting itself. So application has a property called form factor, and it's not telling us what kind of device it is. As soon as I basically set that device to being either a pad or a phone, everything works fine. I have not logged this in Quality Central yet. Hopefully by the time you are seeing this, it will be done. And this will be kind of a mute issue, but I'll post the code until that's done as a workaround. Now, let's go on to some other things. So let's open another project. Shoot, I think I have it in my reopen list. All right, this demonstrates one of my biggest pet peeves in mobile applications. You know, you need to respond to various form factors, but one of the things you need to respond to is there might be half your screen gone with a keyboard. And this is going to try to launch the Android emulator, which I don't have installed. So hold on 2 seconds. I have it installed on a different machine. I use 2 different machines. So hold on here. We're just going to switch this target platform to iOS, and we are going to switch it to, well, the iPhone works fine. So if I run this, the scrollable demo is one that ships in the product. And when you're on a mobile phone, when the virtual keyboard appears, it really is highly annoying when I click on a control, and notice how it's up here now. If I say no edit control, just it gives me some place to click. If I have, say, an edit control at the bottom of a screen, well, the screen needs to scroll up for me. If it doesn't, I can't see where I'm editing. So, as a real quick, we're just going to show you how to do it wrong. File, new, FireMonkey mobile application. We're just going to say a blank form. Say no. This is so easy to do wrong. I have to show you. So I just have, say, this edit box. And we're going to just put it right there at the bottom. And there could be whatever we want anywhere. So let's just, so I'm going to change its style to an iPhone 5, but it really doesn't matter. Make sure that I have my target platform set up to iPhone. So I can type in something here, and I still see it. I can hit the done button. But now I can type in hello world. Now I'm doing it with my keyboard because it will work. But I don't get to see it. And that is one of the most annoying mobile pet peeves. It's seen in tons and tons of mobile applications. And that's just not a good design. Instead, let's go back to that scrollable demo. Ships with FireMonkey. I'm going to just terminate what I was doing. I do not need to save that. In here, as we clicked on those various controls, it scrolled the form up. And ultimately that's done by putting a T-vert scroll box on the form, and everything else gets added afterwards. We use a T layout on top of that, and then everything else gets added to it. With that, now that we have a vertical scroll box, we can use some code to help us. On each of our controls, well, actually, there's some key events that we need. Start off with on the form main. On the main, there's a on virtual keyboard hidden and on virtual keyboard shown. This allows us to change the behavior of our application when that is shown. So if I say, hey, it is shown, I can go find out, well, where is it? Because the keyboard could appear on the top. It could appear lots of different ways. A keyboard can appear on various devices. This allows us to know that, and we just update this keyboard bounds. And basically this ultimately changes the viewport position, and it allows us to scroll to the various spot that we need to. This code is, I'm going to kind of leave an exercise up to the viewer because it is something that ships. Allows you to kind of look at what's going on, but you can then apply these same techniques to your applications as well. So we have on virtual keyboard hidden, on virtual keyboard shown. Another key event that's not shown here is on resize. Anytime your landscape orientation changes, or even the keyboard, resize is called. So if I came in here and we just said open project, I don't want to open project, I want to reopen. I hope it's in my list. Fortunately it's not, so we'll just open. It's in the demos. For those who don't know where the demos are, go into your documents, public documents, Rad Studio 12.0, samples. And in here you'll have them. The FireMonkey Mobile, there's a whole list of these. Right here. In here there's one called Forms, and we'll just open it. And what we have here is a portrait form, and we have a landscape form. So notice the landscapes of the city, the portrait is of the sunset. Inside we have a form resize, and all it's saying, hey, is this height's less than width? Well, then we know we're in landscape. So let's show that form. In the landscape form, we do the exact same thing, and we show if it's reversed, then we get the other one. With that, let's just kind of show you how that works. So it starts up here in portrait mode. If I come over to my hardware menu, I can go rotate right or rotate left. Doing that, you'll see it transitions, and now we're in the landscape, and we can do it back and forth ultimately. But this is a concept that's really simple. It's another demo. It's the forms demo that allows us to show a completely different form if we move from landscape to portrait, and that can be quite useful. What we've done with the tools is we've talked about some common control properties, such as the layout, or with anchors and aligns. We've talked about the different layouts with grid layouts and flow layouts, and then just T layout. We talked about how form families work, and we've talked about some various events that we can use to help with this. One thing that we want to talk about is some of the common design pitfalls that have happened. One is this one perspective design, with or without locking the orientation. There is an option. It's not on by default. I'm not even going to show you where it is because hopefully you never use it. And that is the option to lock your application so that it stays in portrait or landscape mode. And although that works, It's really, really annoying. I have I have an iPad, and I have a case that it sits on, so it's always horizontal. It's never vertical. So it's always in landscape mode. And any app that always makes me be in portrait mode and locks me there, I absolutely hate. In fact, quite often I get rid of. So try to avoid locking perspective. I'm pretty sure I'm one way and somebody else is going to be completely different. So with or without locking the orientation, make sure that you don't just design from one point of view. Try to make sure that your applications can handle the different things. Make sure you respond well to the virtual keyboard. Now, sometimes you may not need a scrollable form because, well, actually, you'll always need a scrollable form. Start playing with it. You'll find out that the virtual keyboard can appear on top. It can appear on the bottom. It all depends on how somebody has their device configured. So don't think that just putting your edit controls at the top is going to cut it. Be aware with your dealing with events. You know, like you might say, hey, I'm going to just move my edit box on selection into an area that's visible. That there could be a hardware keyboard in play. And then the virtual won't appear. So when you're clicking on an edit box, and edit text entry might be coming in, you can't depend on the virtual keyboard to be present. I have a phone, a Nexus, not a Nexus, a Droid 4 actually, an old Motorola Android phone. And it works really well. Delphi apps run fine on it. And it has a slide-out keyboard. And so I never have the virtual keyboard appear in applications on that device. Well, I can't say never because there are a few times it's done that, and they're not in apps that I've written. Remember, the OS can resize your application. So be aware that you may be changing sizes at any given time. Remember that there's like the iPad mini versus an iPad. So there's the 7-inch form factor versus like a 10-inch form factor. Those smaller devices might still look like a tablet, but their real estate is still compromised a little bit. In iOS 7, there's a thing called a control center that can come up and take off part of your screen. There's other things like that. You want to make sure that your OS can, you know that it's going to resize your app at any given time. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see in future versions this idea of side-by-side apps. I know it's in the Windows 8, but I suspect we'll see that someday in maybe iOS or Android. And at that point in time, your application needs to behave quite a bit better. It might have a lot less real estate. So being cognizant of where you are with your sizing is really good. And that allows us to deal with unseen form factors that may happen in the future. Ultimately, I just want to thank you for your time today. If you're watching the live broadcast of this, we'll be taking your questions now. Thank you.
Okay, Robert, I've unmuted you, or maybe you unmuted yourself as well.
Oh no, I'm fine. How you doing?
Okay, so I had to laugh when you talked about your iPad. I have an iPad with Logitech Bluetooth keyboard, and I put it on its side in landscape mode. When I get portrait mode apps, you know, the nice thing is your head and neck can bend in either direction. I can turn it sideways, or I can kind of lean over. Anyway, just kidding. But or you flip it up in the case, as long as you don't do the end with the power on off button. Okay. Lewis asked in the PA server, wouldn't it be great to have the IP address? Just type I, and then you get the IP address inside of the PA server window. We both type that, so great minds think alike, or at least guys that are reading the Q&A log and typing answers to it. You know, I think the PA server, when it comes up, could also display the IP address in the text at the top or in the window caption or something. But anyway, just type I and you get it. And you might have connect, disconnect or something going on, but so you type by and see what it is now versus what it was. Let's see. Can you add a forced break in the flow layout? If yes, how? You
The
answer.
answer is yes. You can use the T-Flow layout break control, and you have a lot of options there.
Yep.
It's not just a simple.
You can also set margins or what is it called? Buffer? What's the property? You set margins. You can set pixels around the controls in a layout to give them some gap, any number of pixels, 4, 10, 20, 40, whatever.
Yes.
That's on all of the 4 sides. Let's see. What was this one? We definitely need to be able to detect what form factor we're working on.
So I was mentioning that I had a problem there, and that application dot form factor does not tell you which form factor you're working on, but it needs to be set to have the form family work. So I created a little unit called Fix Me. You saw on the demo. I logged it in QC. It's in here in the log 119591. And if you go to that QC item, you'll find the unit. It's posted as the workaround. It's a real quick, easy thing to get it to work. Ultimately, we're able to then use that form family now, and you can determine the form factor. You do not need just the application.form factor. There's many other ways.
Yeah, client
You'll see how I do that in that Fix Me.
Yeah, client height, client width.
Yep.
You can see if you can do tests. I think there's a device info example that uses the native APIs to find out what device you're on and what version of a device you're on. So that's an example I think it's in the mobile code snippets called device info. And I
actually use that same concept in the Fix Me thing.
Yep.
So
Android, it goes through the Java interface, and on iOS, it goes through the Objective-C class to do that. So there's lots of different ways. There was a website, an Apple website. I don't think it was Apple, but somebody else created it that had nice information. I'll have to find and log again. And it told you the resolutions for each of the different iOS devices. Their pixels, retina, and so on. I'll have to find that one again. Somebody pointed it to me a while ago. The scrolling keyboard on, the keyboard and scrolling the form. You showed one example. There's a scrollable in the samples, FireMonkey samples. There's a project called Scrollable Form.
That's the one I showed, actually.
Okay. I think it was called Form yeah. Okay. Maybe it was renamed. I always think of it as Scrollable Form, but that's just me. Can the alignment AL client be used with anchored controls?
Yeah, I mean, everything can be parented to everything else, and everything's relative to everything else in FireMonkey. It's really quite nice. And so if I have a T layout that's aligned to AL client, I could have any number of controls that are anchored, but I can't use the anchors independently of the alignments. They are tied together.
Yeah, and you have the same choices as you do on VCL. You can anchor any or all of the corners, right?
Right.
Or edges, top, left, right, bottom.
And they stay relative to their parent control, not to the form itself. So
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and beware, if you're doing things like scalable layouts and growing a layout somehow through a user interface gesture or whatever, you might, and you have a button, let's say in the lower right-hand corner, you could have your layout grow to cover the button. If you have a button anchored on the form, better to anchor inside of a layout or inside of some container. Let's see. Dustin says, thanks for the session. Good info there. Jason Wharton asks, can you tie the label with the edit field in a flow layout so they stay uniformly displayed? For example, you should have the label flip to being on top of the edit instead of on the left of the edit. If you parent the label to the edit box, wherever you put it in relationship to the edit box, as you lay it out, and then as you move the T-edit around, right, Robert, then the label follows.
Right, but the one thing I lacked to do in the demo that I really should have done is I should have dropped down a label, an edit, a T flow break, a flow layout break, and then an edit and a label. So when it was in portrait mode, the labels would be on top, and when it's in landscape mode, they're down the side, giving that compressing up, and it does flow, but it would break evenly, the way you'd want it to break.
I'll just say idea for a demo. Yep, good idea for a demo. Yep. Yeah, 'cause again, everything apparent, and if you drag the label further away from the edit box and you move the edit box, it keeps its relative position, whatever it was. But yeah, the whole rotation, position. I think if you rotate the edit, then the label rotates as well.
Well, one thing that I should note here on layouts that I found really useful is that you got to remember that layouts can contain layouts. So you could have something that you want to stay grouped in a certain way, and you can put all that into a T layout.
Hold on.
And that T layout can be put into a flow layout and have other elements flow with it. So you can nest layouts as any different ways that you'd like.
Yeah, I was getting some audio noise. It sounded like paper scratching across the microphone or something. But
oh, sorry.
It wasn't me. Yeah, it's you. You got to put less starch in your shirt. Okay. Any other questions for Robert? I think I went back and reviewed all the ones that you had previously answered. I don't think I missed anything else. So if there aren't any other questions, Robert, as always, thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Stay warm and dry in Salt Lake City.
So we scraped ice off the windows this morning. Yeah.
Yay! There you go. Yeah, that's the shame. Okay, thanks, Robert.